When it comes to these types of films, to me, I think the make or break is whether someone is able to follow the action as they're going. What was it that was most important to you going into this film that made you want to make sure that the audience was following along properly?
I think honestly it starts with character, and I think that started with Josh. Josh and I had been talking about this film. I got him the script, and we decided we were going to go make it. And I think that when you look at this sort of genre, especially action, if you are invested in the character and there's something that is an anchor point that's grounding it, and there's heart, I think everything else becomes that much more easy to follow, and it's more forgiving for audiences if there's certain flukes or goofs that sort of don't always add up. And so for me, it kind of will always start with the character, and in this case, the relationship and the chemistry between Josh and Jeremy.
He does like those gunshots, though.
Sorry, go
He
ahead.
he does like
I'll
that
be delayed.
those explosions and gunshots. Sometimes I was like, the scene in the room where I fall out the window. That was just like, okay, dude, that's just too many gunshots. It's too many. Somebody's gonna get shot here.
It's true.
But you're right. He does really map out what the action should look and feel like, so it is easier to follow. Because I'm with you. Sometimes I watch, I was like, what? Okay, how are they, how do you end up there? And so it's a really valid point, because sometimes it can be too much.
The geography gets lost. Yeah.
What was something, Josh, that Allan, whether it was giving you a note or something for like a scene that surprised you in the process, and Allan, vice versa, what was something that Josh had done with the character that maybe you weren't expecting?
You always read something a certain way, and then you see what the director has in mind when you get there. And so I was like, okay, you got to wrap your head around what the director sees. And so all the time you're like, okay, so how is this going to make sense? And I think that, one would be out in the desert. How do I show up there without them hearing my car coming? Things like that. And in the movie, you just got to trust the director goes, okay, with sound and, edit, it will all make sense. And you trust that. And sure enough, when I saw the movie, it did make sense.
It's a great question because we established a lot of trust on Bandit, having worked together before. And so there was that room for, interpretation and bringing different ideas. So specifically, there were a lot of different things that we talked about, but I'd say early on, Josh wanting to wear a bald cap and an earring was not something I had on my bingo card. And at first I was a little resistant to it. And I was like, okay, look, Bandit was all about disguises. This is a different movie. Is this just you wanting to get back into prosthetics again? And it ended up being a great idea, and it worked. And we ended up fighting about the earring. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, maybe not gold, maybe silver. That's where we ended up like going back and forth and compromising. But that was sort of, but again, we were trying to create contrast between London and LA and what his life looked like to what it is now. And it was just a really great detail. And that's what Josh does. He brings these amazing little details to round it out that you as a director are not expecting.
Well, now I need to know, was that initially the reason that you went to the prosthetics, or did you legitimately, I want to be in a ball cap again?
Well, I think that it was visualized the difference in his life and where he thought he was, he not realizing that he's probably past his prime. And at this point, he felt like he still was, but you shoot the wrong guy at a party and people have been telling you your sight's not what it used to be for years. Suddenly you're like, oh, maybe my sight isn't what it used to be. And so I think that, then you cut to a year later, he's not that clean cut Jason Statham badass that he was. Now he's a bit of a, down and out character who's just trying to, scratch out some kind of a life in Los Angeles when he's really missing his family back in London.
Final question real quick, just because we were talking about movies that just feel good, right? These 80s action films, and this is kind of a throwback to that. So I just want to know from both of you, what's your favorite action movie? Josh, if you want to go first.
Ooh, geez, my favorite action movie. I think of the car chase from Bullet, Die Hard. It's awesome. There's a lot of action movies that I could refer to.
My favorite action movie is The Rock. Funny enough, he says Michael Bay, but The Rock is, I live and die by The Rock. It's not a buddy cop movie. I think Midnight Run would be my favorite, which sort of has a little influence here, but yeah, 96, The Rock.